Marhaba and welcome to our fireside chat on where we are with the global economy. We've got the slot an hour after lunch. The carbs are probably just kicking in, so we're going to do our best to keep you awake and give you some brilliant opinions, outlooks, and numbers to make sure that everybody is alert as possible through the next 30 minutes, because that's all we've got. I am Brandy Scott, I'm the presenter of the Business Breakfast, and I am joined by the CEOs, the group CEOs of two UAE and regional institutions. I have Ahmed Abdelaal, who's the group CEO of Mashreq from the banking industry, and Ahmed Ismail, who is the group CEO of Majid Al Futtaim. Two Ahmeds, and as I said, we've got just half an hour, so I shall dispense with the PR puffery and we shall get back into the conversation. Let's start, fittingly following the Economy Minister, by getting both of your outlooks for where the global economy, to start with, is now. Starting from a finance point of view, are we teetering on the edge of the world's slowest growing banking crisis, Ahmed? What do you think?
Well, actually, I mean, the year started, as you are all aware, with everyone hoping for a soft landing. But the recent upheaval in the financial sector, global financial sector situation, the unyielding inflation rates as well, has complicated things a little bit. In my view, I mean, I would think that inflation pressures will remain there. We have seen the recent numbers in US labor market, though that most of the regulators are signaling an ease in terms of their tightening policy. I would think the scenario will remain fluid a little bit till end of the year. However, as far as we are concerned in this part of the world, I would think, I mean, you've just heard the minister talking in the session before, we are in pretty unique positioning. The region here is doing fairly well. Financial sector, generally speaking, is doing fairly well. And I would think that this will continue till year end at least.
And Ahmed Ismail, from someone with a view of the consumer world, the retail world, and real estate as well, globally to start and then locally, are we looking at a recession? Are we looking at a pullback in consumer behavior? Where do you think we are?
Well, we operate in 16 markets, and the background to these 16 markets is you have a world going through multiple transitions. You have an energy transition, which is obviously very important. You have a geopolitical alignment that's driving a trade alignment that is quite profound. We're seeing the first iPhone to be produced in India very soon. And together with that, you have the monetary transition that Ahmed talked about, and perhaps we're on the cusp of a technological, if not a cognitive revolution. So against that, background, different markets are obviously positioned differently. I think the UAE is perhaps one of the best positioned markets in the world against all five trends. I think obviously the energy transition agenda is very clear and gaining more traction with COP28. The investment and the regulatory clarity around virtual assets, artificial intelligence is probably world-class here in the UAE. And if you look at the amount of free trade agreements that the UAE has been able to very ably put in place in a very short period of time, means that the UAE and Dubai continues to be one of the few places in the world where you're able to trade east, west, north, south with ease. So it really depends on how these five transitions play out in each market. I do agree that the UAE could potentially grow by 7% this year. We see in our business consumer spend on retail and entertainment growing well ahead of inflation. So that's obviously a very good sign of consumer confidence here in the country. And more importantly, we have an ongoing dialogue with our customers through what we call the Happiness Lab. And the Happiness Lab, we ask customers what's top of their mind, what's their biggest concern. And perhaps mid last year, 4 in 10 people would have been concerned about inflation. That has dropped to 1 in 10. So that goes to show that as the UAE is well positioned along these transitions, that's really translating very clearly to higher consumer confidence and higher consumer spend, which is obviously very good for our business as well.
How decoupled are we really, though? If we look at slower global growth this year, and most of the big unilateral banking and finance organizations are indeed predicting that, how immune can this region and this country stand to that?
Well, you know, in the context of a global economy, if you are directly linked to a global economy and this global economy is seeing a complete demise, you will be impacted one way or another, correct? However, here in the region, in UAE in particular, the banking sector fundamentals are very strong. So robust regulatory frameworks, liquidity levels, capital adequacy, fairly strong. Liquidity as well is helping a lot. Surpluses on the back of coming from the current regime in terms of pricing for oil is helping a lot because governments keep infusing spending in the infrastructure, non-oil linked sector. This is helping also fuel and strengthen the position of banks in the region here. Plus, I mean, if you look at impacts like Silicon Valley Bank or Credit Suisse, for example, and the way that it touches the region here, I would say it's minimum. And I don't think that it's gonna create huge waves in terms of their impact on the sector here.
To play devil's advocate, though, rising interest rates, obviously, we have the correlation there because of the dirham dollar peg. We've seen in the US commercial real estate being impacted, the mortgage market starting to feel a little bit nervous. Are you making greater provisions for bad loans? What are the conversations you're having internally in the bank?
Actually, if you look at the banking profitability, let us take UAE for an example. If you look at the bank's profitability during Q1, significant growth year on year, correct? And it's moving against what we are seeing or define the gravity of the global happenings, correct? And this is driven by several factors. First of all, influx of capital. And the key ingredient for that is the geopolitical stability, as you are aware, and there are plenty of that here in UAE. And the second, returns, which is fairly decent in UAE compared to others. So when we hear the minister talking about 5.7% growth rate moving into 3.5 this year, still at 3.5, this is one of the highest expected or projected growth rates globally. So it's definitely attractive for investors, and this is fueling banking activity here. You look at real estate sector, for example, while it's going into a complete direction elsewhere, here investors see that UAE is an investment haven, and we have seen significant growth in the sector over the last 12 months in particular, driven by so many things. Friendly regulatory frameworks, the banks supporting mortgage schemes, interest rate compared to elsewhere still fairly attractive. Plus, the growth in population is driving demand for most of the activities, particularly non-oil ones.
Okay, population we're going to get to in a moment because you know that's my favorite topic. But before we do, Ahmed, Ismail, tell me, as someone on the coalface, who not only has the real estate exposure, but also the FMCG exposure and that consumer spending exposure. You mentioned inflation there. You said that it was becoming less of a concern, but is it impacting habits? What are you seeing?
So I just want to first maybe comment on the interest rate point, because it is true while interest rates are up, the US interest rate is a 16-year high, we still have an inverted yield curve. So if you are in commercial real estate and you have a strong balance sheet and you're raising long-term money, you're not raising money at sort of the spot or 3-month rate, you're raising money actually at a lower rate than that. And as long as that inverted yield continues, what I feel is going to be the case is that you're going to see a decoupling of a different sort. You're going to see commercial real estate owners and developers who have quality assets, strong balance sheets, will actually continue to drive down their cost of funds on the back of that inverted yield curve, and you're going to have perhaps less, I would say, endowed financially commercial real estate owners with lower quality assets, and that's when the crunch and the decoupling happens, and that also creates opportunities. When it comes to the residential real estate market here, we're obviously seeing tremendous, demand. The population mix in Dubai and the UAE is changing. You have more affluent customers coming in, and you have a lot of people who, would love to call Dubai their home and the UAE their home because of the quality of life, the quality of the infrastructure, and that has, been to our benefit tremendously in our residential real estate business. I think on the consumer side, because we're also not just a real estate developer and operator, we're also a food retailer, we're very cognizant of the cost of living. And I have to say, this is where private-public partnerships also come to bear in a meaningful way. We have in our retail business, in partnership with the ministry, we've kept more than 200 basic commodities and products on price control voluntarily for some time. We have worked with our partners on sustainability, local sourcing and farming to bring more UAE fresh produce, more UAE developed and grown products to the shelf. And by shortening that supply chain, you also shorten, I would say, or lessen the impact of inflation on our customers, and they reward us with their share of mind and their share of wallet.
Well, let's talk about those customers. Both of you have mentioned population there, and you only need to drive on the roads, you only need to have a child in school to know that there is the feel of a swell of population. This panel is about silver linings, and whilst we would never want to capitalize on anybody's misfortune, you can certainly feel around you that the population has grown with the instability in Europe, with the war in Ukraine, with doldrums economically in other economies in Europe, etc., with uncertainty even. It started in COVID, it has continued. What can you give me in the way of numbers that you've seen, in the way of upticks, that might try and put a number on this population growth? Let's play the proxy data game.
Let me start by saying that I will add one more reason, which is the pandemic, actually, because UAE has done a fantastic job during the pandemic, and this has increased the strength of the magnet for people to come in, and this has created influx of people coming to the city. A number that I don't even need to mention is real estate. You look at during the first quarter of this year, 11% hike in real estate prices. The yield curve continue pushing up, and most of the investors that we are seeing coming into the market right now are end users, not speculators, in a sense that I want to buy a second home and Dubai or UAE is the right place to be. Of course, the geopolitical tension that we are seeing everywhere, Russia, Ukraine, US, China, has created additional attractiveness to this place, not only in terms of the lifestyle and the security and everything that's being offered in terms of investors' friendliness, but most importantly as a zone that I want to be in if I want to grow my business. And contrary to what we used to see of late, we are seeing a significant number of businesses moving from Europe, from advanced market like Singapore, coming to moving their headquarters, moving or establishing a global hub out of UAE. We see that clearly in our numbers. You look, for example, at CASA numbers within the banking sector in Q1, there is roughly a 30% growth year on year, despite of the fact, despite of the interest rate regime. I mean, people will think that the direction of travel will be to the other side, but it tells you this is new or fresh liquidity coming in the market, driven by population or people migrating into UAE, not the other way around.
What about what we can measure from things such as new account openings, from credit card applications? What might they tell us about the population?
Actually, in the banking, again, the numbers tell us there is a significant hike in credit. Actually, contrary to what we have seen also in the last 2 years, when you look at the central bank numbers where credit was stagnant or actually reducing, this is the first time that we are seeing positive momentum in the credit, and this is applicable across the board, whether it's for retail and wholesale. So we we are expecting to see 4 to 5% increase year on year in terms of credit in the country here.
And in terms of business borrowing, are interest rates putting our businesses off capex investment?
Well, I'll tell you something. It's a balancing act, correct? Because, of course, I mean, the high interest rate regime is putting tremendous pressure in terms of cost of funding, cost of borrowing, and what have you. However, this is being counterbalanced by the tremendous growth trajectory. So people will say that, okay, do I invest right now and reap fruits of that, or do I delay my investment till later, and then by then I've lost the market already? But we are seeing significant investment in capex. Retail, as Ahmed just has said, is growing. Most of the retailers are investing in digitization and digital transformation across the board, not only in banking, across the entire market. So there is significant areas for investment, particularly in the non-oil driven sector. Education, healthcare is two important ones.
Well, as you said, Ahmed has great visibility. He knows everything from the number of people walking through the malls to how many mandarins they're buying. So what can we take proxy data-wise, Ahmed, from what you're seeing?
So in the first quarter, and it's important to appreciate that this quarter, we're already lapping a very strong Q1 in 2022 with Expo and you know, taking out the seasonality with Ramadan, etc. So if we just focus on the first 2 months of the year, what we've seen is we've seen double-digit growth in footfall, which is very encouraging, and it goes to show that, you know, the population is growing. And that's not just increased frequency, this is actually more people that we can track individually as new customers coming through the door. What we see as well is very healthy spend on value retail, on entertainment, almost 8 to 9% growth February year to date versus last year. And obviously the fastest growing category has been luxury retail, jewelry, watches, etc., which goes to show, you know, at growth sometimes exceeding 30%, goes to show the change of population mix that we're actually witnessing here in the UAE. I also want to perhaps bring another, I would say, element to the real estate demand side, because you have a new, you know, you have new buyers, you have people who are moving to Dubai, but what we're also seeing is we're seeing first-time buyers in Dubai who are buying their home after being in the country for 6 to 7 years. And that's quite interesting because it goes to show that actually the pandemic, unlike many cities around the world, where actually the pandemic drove people outside the city, the way Dubai and the UAE handled the pandemic, it gave a lot of confidence, loyalty, and commitment to the city, and encouraged more and more people to commit, invest, and lay roots in Dubai, which is quite fascinating, and I think goes to show, you know, how public policy could really move the needle significantly.
Oh, I agree with you. It was me on Thursday that I was doing the deed transfer. I can tell you that firsthand, and the office was full. So let's have a look at what it means for where you're taking your companies. Is the growth of Dubai impacting where you are investing? How does where we are now economically change your priorities?
Well, actually, mainly positioning, being a UAE-based regional bank with global or presence in global markets. The strength of the economy in the region, the strength of the economy in the country is improving our positioning significantly. Also, the robustness of the performance is allowing us and other banks to invest and explore also cross-border opportunities in a sense that supports, again, the trade corridors, whether it's UAE Asia, UAE Africa, UAE Europe, UAE US as well. And we are pretty much focused right now on building or supporting those key trade corridors. You know, UAE, for example, have signed so many free trade agreements with other countries like India, for example, and this is an area of focus for us in particular. We are focused also as an organization on our digital transformation programs and expanding that to markets after being fairly successful in UAE, scaling this to critical mass markets within the region here, like in Egypt and also Pakistan and other regional areas. And most importantly, as well, supporting the growth strategy when it comes to sustainability and sustainable finance. This is a growing area also of interest for us. COP27 last year in Egypt has implanted a very good regional seed. 28 happening this November here is in UAE is expected to bring in a new life and boost and accelerate this very important vertical and open opportunities for growth for us and other financial institutions in the region as well.
When you're investing digitally, where are you putting your money?
Client experience, basically. Client experience and personalization. And, you know, it's multifaceted kind of an approach. Let me take one, using AI, for example. You know, predictives have been there for quite some time, but how can you use that to get a better understanding of your clients in each and every market, their wants and needs, and then build journeys that are custom made to entertain those needs? Not at the group level, but at the individual level. And this is our focus right now. We can talk about efficiency, cost savings, and what have you, and risk management, but our focus organizationally is on using the might of technology to deliver unmatched client experience.
Does that mean, and Ahmed, bear with me, it's your turn next, that you're investing in generative AI? What conversations are you having around this space?
We are investing in generative AI. We are investing in predictive AI. And we have actually 3 major global hubs right now, one here in UAE, another one in Egypt, another one in India, focusing on generative AI. Everyone is talking about ChatGPT, for example, since it's being launched last August from OpenAI. It's a new frontier, and I think that it will present significant opportunities for humans in general, banking especially, to accelerate the client experience drive, for example.
Could it cost jobs, though, within the bank?
Well, you know, everything has a double sword. I was talking about the same thing a couple of days back, and people say that will generate job losses. It will impact the lives of humans and what have you. But you know what? You can use ChatGPT or technology, for example, semiconductor to create a bionic arm that can help someone a handicap, or you can use it to create a weapon of mass destruction. You can use drugs to heal people, or you can use it to kill them, correct? I think the AI in general, if put to the proper use, will have significant influence on our lifestyle and our life prospects as well as humans.
Ahmed, your turn. Majid Al Futtaim is quite open about its expansion plans. Tell us what we don't know about where you're taking the company.
Unfortunately, I can't tell you what you don't know. But what I can tell you is, obviously, you know, the UAE continues to be our home market, and it continues to be a market where we disproportionately reinvest, and a market where we're also aware that because of the demographic changes that we've discussed earlier, the market is getting a lot more competitive, and customer expectations continue to rise. So what was a great moment, and we at Majid Futtaim think that we are in the business of creating great moments. What was a great moment, you know, a year or 2 years ago may not be so great. And we have to continuously invest in rethinking and reimagining the experience that we offer to our customers. And across all of our businesses, a big part of the experience is actually payment. And, you know, it's quite appropriate that we're in a fintech conference. Today, across all of our ecosystem, you know, you can pay with our own wallets, you can pay with our own digitized credit cards. And if you watched CNN recently, you would have seen that, you know, in Carrefour, you can go and pay with your smile, actually with facial recognition, which requires a bit of AI as well. So the technology plays a huge part in upgrading the experience. And we think forward for, you know, our ambitions within Majid Futtaim, we want to double profitability in the coming 3 years. And doubling profitability, a big part of it will come through technology that makes the experience even more differentiated, even more profound. And the challenge for us is to continue to win a larger share of consumers' hearts, minds, and eventually their wallets.
I'll ask you the generative AI question as well then. Are you already investing?
We are exploring. I think that today it's the next frontier. It is what's talked about and perhaps hyped in all discussions. But one of the areas where we see massive, I would say, use for AI is pricing. Back to inflation, and how can you price in such a way to continue to maximize, obviously, your commercial gains, but to continue to win the trust of customers on the long term. And part of the business that we're in depends a lot on human negotiation. And I don't think in any human negotiation, whether you're negotiating with a supplier or you're negotiating with a tenant, you can completely replace human negotiation with AI. But in many instances, we see a near enough future where you have an AI-assisted negotiator. And that would help us, on the long term, price products at the right time, at the right place, at the right price for our customers.
Bricks and mortar, though. Talal Al Ghaf is probably one of the most discussed real estate developments in this city. How big could real estate become to Majid Al Futtaim?
So Majid Al Futtaim, real estate is already big. It's actually this month that for the first time in the history of the company, we've recorded as much revenues out of our residential development business as we did from our shopping mall business. So it's already quite a sizable business for us. It's a business where we think we have an edge because of our ecosystem advantage, because of our digital and customer experience, and it's a business that we will continue to grow on the long term. I don't think we have the ambition to become the largest residential developer, but we certainly want to be a residential developer that continues to deliver these great moments for our residents. And if any of you haven't been to Talal Al Ghaf, I think it's a great experience that you must experience firsthand to understand, the type of promise we're making to our customers.
With the new communities coming up, what opportunities does that give you in terms of the retail space?
It does create plenty of opportunities. I mean, obviously, there is the classic retail component of any multi-use development, but we're also experimenting with, staffless stores, so stores that will be open 24 hours so the community you can grab and go from Carrefour anything you want, 24 hours. We're experimenting with, in partnership with the government of Dubai, with drone delivery. So that obviously opens up a new avenue for customer engagement, especially within a well-controlled community. And, the customer relationship that you establish is a lifetime relationship in a community. So it creates plenty of opportunities across our ecosystem to continue to have that very deep and unique relationship with our customers.
Well, we've got 2 minutes left with you. This is a conference about fintech and about disruption. There are certainly plenty of startups in these halls who would love to disrupt you both on the payment side, on the banking side, on the money transfer side. What new technologies, what new initiatives are you both most excited about at the moment? What do you think we are going to be discussing 6 months from now, Ahmed?
I think this has been happening for quite some time in other parts of the world, but what we will see evolving here is banking as a service. And this is something that we are pretty much focusing on. So, for those who are familiar with our partnership with Noon, for example, is a case in point. What Alipay, what Amazon has done in terms of supply chain and working with their banking partners to support SMEs, for example, is the new frontier. And we don't look at fintech as competition, but rather partner or solid ground for partnership. I don't think that a fintech company would worth spending the time and money in building a banking infrastructure. At the same time, they give banks a faster access to innovation and access to new markets and segments banks wouldn't be interested in, especially when it comes to financial inclusion. So for us, banking as a service is the way to go, which is something that we are adopting across the region here.
Ahmed?
So my pitch to all the startups inside the room and outside the room is don't compete with Majid Futtaim, actually come and partner with Majid Futtaim. We have a new partnership that we're doing with DIFC, through which Majid Futtaim and DIFC will be offering a launchpad for startups in relevant areas to our industry, where we will support them to grow and scale through commercial access to the Majid Futtaim business. And it's in areas that I think are very exciting and also very relevant. It's in fintech, prop tech, climate tech, which is increasingly important. And we hope that, we'll be able to source some very good entrepreneurs before COP28. And more importantly, or equally as important, is local, brands that we would like to scale up in the UAE and beyond UAE through our network. So if you're an aspiring startup, please come and talk to us in our booth outside.
Ahmed Abdelaal and Ahmed Ismail, thank you so much for joining me today.
It's our pleasure. Thank you so much. Thank you.